When we were joking around on Henry Fool about the film having these sequels and stuff like that, it's funny to say this about yourself, but yeah, I don't think I was ever really joking.
I believed Hal, yeah, when he said he wanted to make a sequel to Henry Fool and to have it be about Faye going to find Henry. But I didn't know what it was going to be like.
If you'd asked me after the first film what a sequel would be, I would have guessed completely. I wouldn't have guessed this movie.
Well, it's Hal Hartley. It's a Hal Hartley bouillabaisse of complication.
I didn't have to keep the stuff straight, but when the actors came in and they were asking all these questions.
Everybody's a terrorist and a lot of people get killed.
I was totally lost.
Well, I recently received a package that I've just figured out is from my father.
Just think of every international conspiracy theory that you've ever heard, and all of these are contained in Henry Fool's Confessions.
The man seems to bring trouble everywhere he goes, and now the government's on his tail.
Some classified, some interesting and highly incendiary information, possibly.
I made the first film under the assumption that the guy was delusional and a bullshit artist. And then this script pops up that says basically, oh no, everything he said was absolutely literally the case. Yeah. So you know, now I want to remake the first movie.
Everyone that she comes in contact with falls in love with her and is a terrorist, or at least a spy.
Because she's so damnably intriguing and enchanting.
And then I just say, I don't have to know what's going on. Because my character doesn't have to know what's going on.
But then I lose her, then I can't find her. She disappears and she goes off on her own. I try to find her, but it seems like I could use her to get these books and then to Saeed Khan. That's some of it.
The complexity of the whole world opens up to her. She's got a complex life, you know, raising a kid on her own, and a brother who's in prison and a husband who's missing. It's a complex thing.
I wanted to give the impression of a woman that was kind of, hadn't left the house, still wearing the sweater that she wore 10 years ago.
I wanted her to be the representative American type, in the best sense of the word for me. I would like to imagine that there is a representative American who's a well-intentioned, decent person who happens to be naive about the actual way the world is.
She's probably never read a paper, never turned on TV, couldn't afford it, or just completely out of touch. This killing stuff isn't really going on.
Rather than just confront her naivete and fold back into it, she is in a situation where she can't do that. She's not given that opportunity. So she confronts it head on and sort of learns a lot of the technique of the bad guys, as I call them, and she beats them at their own game.
We feel that nothing's going to come inside our house, you know, and she leaves her home and she wakes up to these truths.
I think she's a heroine in the old-fashioned sense, because she takes control of her own situation, where in the beginning she's not in control of the situation, and she takes control of it, but she learns, and I think the film goes far to illustrate how she's seeing how these people dupe each other and how they dupe her, and then she takes those same techniques and uses them at the crisis moment at the end of the film, simply to save some misguided but basically decent person, Bibi Konchalovsky. She really becomes heroic, I think, because she says, okay, I'm going to try to do two things at the same time. I am going to meet my husband on this boat. I'm going to somehow maybe pull the whole family back together somehow. But before I do that, I've got to save this Chechnyan girl from unjust punishment.
aquí tus trailers, visita mi canal.
And action.
A self-perpetuating literature of obfuscation, hearsay, rumor, innuendo, and outright lies. A bestseller for sure.
Settle down, you lunatics. It's fucking psychological terrorism, kind of germ warfare of the brain. And we gotta get our hands on whoever's orchestrating this.
Henry?
Not necessarily.
Who then?
Yesterday, a freelance Russian spy, an Iranian named Andrei Soltani, was found shot to death on a Paris side street.
You think there's a connection?
Unfortunately, yes, I do. Faye had been with him earlier in the day.
So?
Got anything to drink?
And cut.
Thank you.
No, it works out.
All right.
Ready, start shooting.
I really like the way Hal works. He works really quickly.
His directing style is very specific and precise. And it's fun to act in. It's fun to, because that means you're witty and precise.
It's almost like theater. There's like a frame that you go in and out of, which you never, when you prepare for his movies, you never know how it's going to be shot. I think most films, you kind of know.
The first movie was hard for me because I had never worked in a movie. Hal's specifics in moving people through a frame and stuff. I didn't know that's not the way most people worked.
Hal has a particular emotional kind of choreography, I think.
I didn't know what coverage was. I didn't know we weren't doing it. I didn't know, you know, that basically usually they shoot it 10 different ways and then decide later what it's going to be, and that it's not usual for a director to know going in on the day more clearly and specifically what shot will tell the story.
What we're trying to do is make visible what's going on in your heart and in your head. Well, lots of things can be happening in there, but the only evidence we can possibly have of what's happening in their heads and in their hearts is what they say and what they do, but what they do not necessarily as a decided upon conscious action or reaction to something, but how they move and what they do. That's why I often direct people into areas where it doesn't really make any sense. It is kind of arbitrary.
It's more dance-oriented. You really feel choreographed.
Yes, he, when approaching a scene, seems to have a planned out, I suppose Hitchcock did something not dissimilar from what I hear, has something very choreographically planned out and plotted out as to how you're going to move through a scene, how the scene's going to be staged, and then how he is also going to film it.
Fulbright, we're not clear on the American position.
Yeah, well, neither am I. So I got to get over to the U.S. Embassy in Pakistan and find out. I'll be back in a few days.
There may very well be a new government here when you return.
No. Andre, can I give my own personal estimation of things?
Of course.
When the present government collapses, there will be no new government, only chaos. I've enjoyed it at no end. It's a fun, delightful game to me, which I like because he's very smart. He knows the material, and he's organic, and he's thinking humanly and character-wise. So the things that he's plotted out have always felt so far to me, and I have only one scene left, perfect, exactly what I want to do. The French are in a tight spot. The Germans, the Belgians, the Israelis, China. Nobody wants the French to hand over these books to the U.S. However, there's a treaty, an old one, a loophole in that treaty, which prevents the French government from impounding an American citizen's property under certain narrowly defined conditions, which we've recently had broadened due to the current unstable international terrorist situation, etc. So since the books were written by Henry, and that you're Henry's widow, the books obviously belong to you. The French will take a lot of crap from the European Union for a week or two, but then so what? Believe me, Faye, this is critical, and you're the only one who can do what needs to be done. And then it's left to some adjustment when we start to put it on its feet, and he sees it, he sees how we're doing it, and he gets some more ideas about why I might be doing this thing and or what else I could do or how it might be different, and so we adjust it, and it's a collaboration. But I like this whole game of, look, here's where I'd like you to go, and then I, have to use my imagination sometimes to justify it, which I like to do.
As an actor, that's actually weirdly liberating. It's not, you don't feel constricted because what you're doing is acting, and within these very specific circumstances that he sets up. And that creates a really nice tension that actually I think is very dramatic and shows you a lot about the character's sort of emotional life and their sort of internal struggles.
I was doing a line and he said, stop in the middle of the line, look over here, 3 count, and come back and finish the line. And I was like, well, what's that going to do? That's a pause that doesn't seem right to me. And when I saw the movie, every time, it got a laugh.
When we're on the set, the pleasure and the terror is, I don't know, this is not working for me, I need you to walk over to the window before you say that line. And of course, you people being good at what you do, you'll say, well, why would he or she do that? And that's when I'm like, I don't know. Figure out. Please try to figure out a reason. If in the next 8 minutes we can't figure out a good reason for you to be over at the window, which works for you, then we'll do something else.
Well, one of 2 things to me happens, which is I instantly go, oh yeah, of course. Well, that's perfect. I want to move there. Or I go, I don't understand that. I don't understand why I'm going to move over there. And sometimes I do. I get through it by saying, okay, I don't tell him, but you know, I say, okay, I'm going to put the cigarette lighter on that bed over there, and that'll be my reason to go over and sit down over there. And I'll just go do it, and that's enough to get me over there. And sometimes that's helpful, and sometimes I don't need that. I just say, just stand up and walk over there. Think. Just, you're thinking, and your body takes you over there. We do that in life. I'm going to go look out the window. I don't know why I'm going to do that. I don't want to sit here anymore.
It's not naturalism. It's even more complicated than stuff you would see on stage. And there's a lot of depth, too, things that are going on in the foreground. There's a lot of crossing that doesn't, you know, doesn't feel like, well, would real people do this? Although, everybody should throw that out. Real people do everything.
On the page, when I'm writing, there's definitely, I need to see the movement in my head. I need to, which was one of the pleasures of writing Fay in the first place when we did Henry Fool. I knew the way you could cock your hip and tap your foot and fold your arms, and I'd actually write that in there. Because for me it was like this graphic thing, and I liked that movement. And somewhere along the line, early in my career, I began to notice that there was this opportunity and joy in writing a script, which can be a very dry sort of thing. Scripts are like lists of things you're supposed to look at to tell the story. But the description of activity, what people do while they're talking to each other or trying to avoid a conversation, or you know, the things they do, the activity, and that became a big deal for me. And I found a real pleasure in describing it. And I think I got better at delineating character by exercising that.
One of my favorite things about this movie is that Hal makes open fun of the people who don't know which way he's running, to the airplane or away from the airplane at the end of the first movie, which never even occurred to me as a possibility at the end of the first movie. It seemed clear to me that the character was running away from the community and toward the plane.
Why wouldn't he have gotten on the plane? He was in trouble. He was running away. That was the whole point.
A lot of my films end on a suspension. They go to a place where and the foot doesn't fall. The last foot doesn't fall. And Henry Fool, in a certain sense, is a variation of that. But it leaves more open. It was more extreme a little bit. It left that question open. It was not something I could deny.
He may have suddenly felt full force the love he had for you, his son, his friends, the community.
Easy, Carl.
First thing I heard after the first audience saw it was that question. What's his future? Is he going back? Is he going forward? And that educated me about the possibilities of the movie.
And the Fay is more calculated, I think. It took a lot of inspiration from that. Because I really want to know, you know, what's Faye going to do now?
The next movie has to do with the little boy and his future, which I don't know if that's what's going to be, but whatever it is, since Henry talks so much and is such a blowhard, there might be something attractive about seeing him wind down later in his life, not be so verbal.
I mean, I hope she becomes a whirling dervish. I really do, in Turkey.
I think it has to move east.
A silent, really silent movie of Asian influence.
What's it going to do? Go back to America?
It clearly is an endeavor. It's a particular type of creative thing, which is a lifetime kind of thing to say, well, these characters that I've managed to make up, and then these characters which got even more fleshed out and acquired more dimension as a result of my creative collaboration with these actors. Wouldn't it be great to have a project that just never ends, that always moves on until it maybe will find in, say, if we make a third film 10 years from now, we'll find that it has naturally, organically, the rhythm of conclusion, and that it ought to be brought to a close, but maybe not.
On this episode of Higher Definition, indie film great Hal Hartley returns with his Empire Strikes Back. And if that sounds confusing, well, I'll explain that and much more on this episode of Higher Definition. Welcome to Higher Definition. I'm, as always, your host, Robert Wolonsky, and I am here to answer that one question that has been burning a hole inside your head for the last 10 years. What happened to all the people who were in Hal Hartley's 1997 film, Henry Fool? Well, maybe you haven't had that question, but certainly the fans of Hal Hartley's beloved 1997 film have. They have written him a lot of letters. They have sent him emails. They have probably tied a letter to a pigeon and sent it to his apartment in New York or France or Germany, where he now lives. Well, Hal Hartley is here to answer that question with his 2007 film for HD Net Films called FAY GRIM, in which he brings back all of those familiar faces. Parker Posey's FAY GRIM, Thomas J. Ryan's Henry Fool, James Urbaniak's Simon Grimm, adds a few new characters, including Jeff Goldblum as a CIA agent who is after Henry Fool's journals because he believes that they contain important secrets about international intrigue. And Hal Hartley has put them all into another film, which may be his Empire Strikes Back, an apt metaphor given that he is looking to create this huge mythology about these very small people living extraordinary lives. Now, I don't want to waste a lot of time talking about FAY GRIM because we have the man who made it here to talk about it. We also have FAY GRIM herself, Parker Posey. We also have Henry Fool himself, Thomas J. Ryan, and newcomer to the Hal Hartley family, Jeff Goldblum. They're in this first segment. After that, we'll have the beautiful Saffron Burrows, Elena Lowenson, and on and on and on. It is all FAY GRIM all the time on this episode of Higher Definition. So here they are, my favorite singing duet from the 1960s, Jeff Goldblum and Parker Posey, as well as Henry Fool himself, Thomas J. Ryan.
What is it you have come here for?
I'm looking for my husband.
Your husband? What's his name?
Henry.
The story about this very good woman who wants to, find her man again, but doesn't want to deal with those feelings of loving him. Among all this terrorist stuff, and everyone is a spy, and everyone's trying to trap her, and everyone wants something from her, yet she just kind of wants to look nice in her coat and be with her man. But he's working for, terrorism. This Henry Fool world, when he came up with this idea, was this kind of, it's kind of a mythic, huge, epic story. And Henry comes to town, he's like this devil kind of guy who lives in the basement and has written all this pornography, and I'm turned on by it, and everyone else thinks it's trash, and my brother, the garbage man, is sent to jail because what was going on at that time, which was the internet, dealing with censorship, and So, you know, there's all this drama that happens with that, but ultimately what Henry does is he enlightens this kind of world that's very closed in, and they kind of wake up. So there's this kind of like, you know, electricity going on with these people.
Jalal, you can't bring Faye into all this madness.
She's already in all this madness. You yourself made sure of that.
Hey, I just fell in love with her. I didn't send her a note and ask her to join some half-assed jihad.
Henry, it's difficult to be your friend.
Yeah, well, stand in line, pal. This character's my legacy, if I'm going to ever have one. I mean, this character means a great deal to me. He gave me a first draft in '04 at some point. And I knew that my part was going to be more in this, and I'd sort of made my peace with that. But I was sitting on a train going to Washington, D.C., and I'm reading, and I'm on page 20, I'm on page 40, I'm on page 90, and I'm thinking to myself, Hal, when this scene comes, it better be good. Right. You better have written something for me to do when I show up. But the main thing about this, I mean, yes, and then
well,
the
when
scene
you get
was
to the
great.
scene, then what? What did you think?
Well, I hit the scene and it was astounding because, well, more than the scene, the idea that everything we assume about Henry in the first film, which is basically that he's a brilliant bullshit artist,
right,
and that all of these stories about his past are all sound and fury, signifying very little, and maybe he's not very talented. I think as a viewer and as an actor, I performed the entire first movie under that assumption. And so imagine what it is after having done that, made that, gone away for years, and then we see the sequel, and the sequel tells the world, no, he's quite brilliant, and he really has done all those things. He's had all those adventures. We want you to believe everything in that first film that he says about himself and take it for face value. It was a brilliant stroke, I thought, a brilliant, unexpected stroke. And people who see the film, who love the first film, are going to be shocked by it, I think.
And where are those books I asked for? This is cruel and unusual punishment, my friend. If the opinion of the world is of no consequence to you, I think you'd at least have enough self-respect to act like a gentleman.
But you're not, of course, now suggesting that you are a gentleman.
Hey, I was suave enough in my day.
Having read the script when we were in Paris, it did not prepare me for sort of the film. There's a sort of energy about the film, whether it's the canting of the camera, whether it's the performances, it's sort of the delivery, the whole thing.
It is tough to imagine in a way, even though you get that this tone is not that wildly different from Henry Fool, you know, it's really, so you get the kind of idea. But it's true, now that he says it, I mean, it's the script, but you don't know how it's going to work. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and it really works with the audience, doesn't it? I mean, it really works like a whole piece of music, and boom, 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 the music is there, and he writes the music.
Well, he's so talented, you know, he's such an artist, and he, you know, he paints, he's, you know, plays music, he writes, does his own music to his movies, and he's this highly intelligent writer, and, you know, there are no cuts in the film, hardly, not a lot of editing, and for time reasons and budget reasons, so the shots are usually very still, so you're not really used to looking at an entire, what's in an entire frame of a picture. And so, like, someone walks in and is in the front, and then someone walks across and goes to do other types of business off camera, and then comes back in, and someone leaves. So it's like, it does create kind of an energy around what you're, you know, the screen that you're seeing. So there's just a natural kind of energy and tension as an actor when you're working like that.
Having worked with Hal several times, and this being your first experience, I'm interested in both of your perspectives on sort of how do you balance that negotiation of all the myriad levels of meaning within every line of dialogue. I mean, it's the way they're delivered. Just all of it is just so kind of, I would think, overwhelming to someone just watching it.
Well, especially, I mean, Jeff has all those crazy lines. I don't know how you memorize all that. That's what everyone says. How do you memorize your lines? But she really did. But he's got the, you know, he's got the brain for it. He's a smart man.
Look at the big brain on Brad.
I like to work. I like
You like it. And you just gotten done with Pillow Man, which was like a lot of like monologues and which is really fun. You like doing that?
Well, you know, I've done whole movies where I've just improvised the whole thing, and I like that too. I'm just kind of conscientious enough or fretful enough so that as soon as I get a part, I feel like I have to spend at least part of every day thereon kind of doing something about it. So I kind of enjoy, and it's enjoyable. It keeps me out of trouble, and it's kind of nice. And so in this, it was nice. You know, I started to work on, put together what that could be, and it was a little. Then I have people come over to my house, and they play the other parts, you know, and I kind of do little run-throughs with them. So I was kind of ready for that. And I guess I was glad I did it in this case because he wanted me to do it kind of fast. And if I was just trying to go, what is it again? Let me see. I wouldn't have enjoyed that as much because I've done that recently, and I've done cram. You ever have to cram on where somebody says, no, I want you to say it exactly as it is, and really rattle it off, and you go, well, I mean, I can memorize, but it's time. It takes me. It's backbreaking work actually, and it's if you really get that, and then try to do it as if it's spontaneous, and try to make it like you're making it up. And I'm not sure how successful I am. It's always. There's a bridge between kind of what you've designed and memorized and try to make look like you're making it up and real improvising. That's why improvising is so fun and feels so good.
The French are in a tight spot. The Germans, the Belgians, the Israelis, China. Nobody wants the French to hand over these books to the U.S. However, there's a treaty, an old one, a loophole in that treaty, which prevents the French government from impounding an American citizen's property under certain narrowly defined conditions, which we've recently had broadened due to the current unstable international terrorist situation, etc. So since the books were written by Henry, and that you're Henry's widow, the books obviously belong to you. The French will take a lot of crap from the European Union for a week or two, but then so what? Believe me, Faye, this is critical, and you're the only one who can do what needs to be done.
Everything I thought was real isn't. Every perception I had has been vanished.
Yeah.
And I assume that must be 1,000-fold for you.
Yeah, and it's hard to act in that uncertainty in a way. You feel like, well, I really need to know the answer, or I'm sort of immobilized as an actor because I need to know. But for some reason, that would be true other places. But here, I just go. I just go with Hal and where we are. And we're making. In this film, we are assuming that this guy has lived through all this, and these people he's surrounded by, the Jalal character particularly, is who I'm working with, that they have a history, and you act the scenes, and and certainly the draw toward Faye, even though you never see these two together in the film, there's the draw of the two of them, whether they're magnetized together or shouldn't be, or whether she's trying to get away from the draw.
Doomed or fated, it's sort of...
Yeah, you don't know, and in a weird way, that's something very playable. And as I say, we don't know what the answers are. I've said to Hal, you know, we've posed a lot of questions now in 2 films. And do we owe some answers in the third? I don't know.
Do you want them answered?
I don't know. I might be wrong. You know, for my own satisfaction, I might like them answered, but I don't know what the most satisfying thing is. You were asking Hal earlier about the plane image at the end of the first movie, and I've really spent 10 years people asking me, oh, I know you're running back, you know, and everybody has their own answer to that. And I always find that I can tell what people think about which way I was running based on their personality. Really optimistic, sweet, sentimental people really wanted him to be running back to the family and all that. And sort of, you know, kick-ass, you know, drunks feel like, no, he's got to run forward, he can't run. And I don't know, that ambiguity seemed quite delicious to a lot of people, so I think maybe we should keep cooking it up for a little while.
See, doesn't Jeff Goldblum look like the kind of guy you could hang out with for about a year? Speaking of hanging out with somebody for about a year, that feels about how long I was with Parker Posey. Met up with her in Paris dang near a year ago where she was filming FAY GRIM. Then she went to Berlin, then Istanbul, then New York. I saw her again in Toronto in September 2006 talking about FAY GRIM. Then she was at Sundance in January 2007 with FAY GRIM. Speaking of Sundance, that's where we caught up with Hal Hartley, the writer and director of FAY GRIM. He is next on Higher Definition. Whoever would have guessed that FAY GRIM would turn out to be Princess Leia, Simon Grimm would turn out to be Luke Skywalker, and Henry Fool would turn out to be Han Solo. Turns out that's pretty much what Hal Hartley had in mind. Turns out FAY GRIM is going to be his Empire Strikes Back. I can't wait to see the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. Here he is, the writer and director of FAY GRIM, Hal Hartley.
We need book 6.
Let's talk about the look of it. Because as I was saying, we were there. We saw you shooting it with the Dutch angles and shooting in high def. That was the first time you've shot in high def,
That's
wasn't
right,
it?
yes.
Was it a big adjustment for you?
In fact, no. Before we began shooting, we were all made very nervous by all the articles that we read and all the hearsay, and that, you know, HD is very sensitive, and, you know, it's nothing like shooting film, so you have to relearn everything, and that turned out to be complete garbage. And
Really?
We, you know, a half an hour into tests with the camera and the technology, we were like, yeah, we know how to do this. We've spent our whole lives shooting.
Right.
35 millimeter and learning about light and focus and all, and you know, it's the same thing. It's just a different machine.
Well, and then having come off things like the Girl from Monday, which is digital video, I mean, you certainly like to experiment with the format anyway.
Right.
I assume that's one of the things that drew you to doing this in high def.
I was interested in investigating what high def could bring, but in fact, in high def, very drastically different than shooting in conventional TV. I shot very much like we would in 35.
Yeah.
Shooting in HD for me was essentially no different than shooting in 35.
I had read an interview you had done many years ago talking about Henry Fool, in which you talked about, even then, that you thought that this would be an ongoing saga.
Yeah, well, you see, this is funny. When did we begin seriously, when did our jokes about a series of films actually start to become real? Because before we started shooting the film, Parker and Tom and Zerbaniak and I would joke about that, because the script was around for a while and they were familiar with it. And but I would still be making changes to the script, and I would say, take out a scene that somebody really liked, and they'd, you know, cry a little about that, say, oh, I really love that scene. And I would joke and say, don't worry about it, that will be in part 7.
Right.
And we started to joke about the film, because it did have this kind of epic swagger to it, you know.
Right.
And at a certain point, that we used to compare it to Star Wars. So, what could we possibly do with this? And I think I didn't really seriously consider continuing the story until maybe 4 years after the film was released. And I understood that the fan base for the film was not only of a certain size, but it was of a certain intelligence and articulation. Fan mail regarding Henry Fool goes, there's certainly the total nut cases who totally identify with Henry. Yeah, I have a whole collection of these letters from people. I understand Henry exactly. I'm just like him. I live in the basement, and I'm writing this great novel. There's those, but then there's other people who are really moved by it in lots of different ways, and are really curious to continue the conversation that the film brought up.
It has so much fun with the conventions of it, and it has so much fun with the conventions of its predecessor. And it just seems that you guys had a blast while making it. And it's really infectious as you're watching it. I was talking to Jeff Goldblum in Toronto about this idea that everyone sort of seems to be dancing with each other on the set. It just seems to have this sort of really great vibe and energy about it.
Yeah, I think as I continue to make films, I'm getting more and more confident recognizing that about what I do. I mean, if you talk to people who made films with me in the early 90s, they would probably say the same thing, like, yeah, you know, he moves us around very specifically. He gives us a way to move. And, you know, it's not like I dream this up at home and then I come and I force everybody to do it. It's sort of, you have a general idea and then they apply themselves to it. And then we sort of work it out in rehearsals. But then it's set. And we say, okay, this is it. This is the little dance that we're doing. And at this, you know, after doing this for whatever, 17, 18 years, I know what I'm after now. It's like I'm trying to get the rhythm and the melody of the dialogue to fit together with the rhythm of the movements and even the spaces, you know, the pauses between words. And yeah, I can talk about that like this now, but it took all these films to make me capable of that. And in this film, I think there are scenes where we really excel. I do it as good as I've ever done it.
Look what they did to her face.
Is it bad?
It becomes you.
Don't you dare flirt with me, Fulbright.
Jeff is a great example because who knew, you know,
And what's it got to do with Henry?
I was so happy that he was interested in the script, but then when we got to know each other and I began to see his work on stage, and I began to understand that this guy moves. He's a dancer. He really, and he's got a rhythm that's entirely different. His speaking rhythm and his moving rhythm is entirely different than the rhythm I introduced in the writing, which is what you always hope for. Tom Ryan has a totally different rhythm than how I hear it in my head too, and that's what you're always looking for, this sort of, these two rhythms bumping into each other, and this new thing is created.
There's a gun at your son's head this very moment. Pull yourself together. Let's do this. It'll be over in a minute.
There's one thing I just think is remarkable about it. She looks like a superhero by the end of the film.
Yeah, we kind of designed her to be, you know, frazzled single mom in Queens, and then, you know, she gets a little bit more style conscious in order to fly to Paris, and then she gets to Paris and she's like got this coat that Angus gave her. Right. You know, and so she's having this affair with this rich older man, and he buys her some sexy stuff.
Visita mi canal.
And but she would never wear it in Queens. So, but she's in Paris, she puts it on, and then of course all hell breaks loose. And the idea was, that was the logic on one level, but the other logic was, by the time the shit hits the fan in Paris and all this espionage starts happening, that she's a superhero. We wanted her, so we got this chunky shoes and this coat, which her and the German stylist eventually found, really just like 2 days before shooting.
Really?
It was like a week of a lot of work, you know, these girls going shopping and coming back, her trying on all this stuff and not liking it, and then somebody said the word goth. And I was like, yeah, go somewhere, go out shopping and think goth. And they found at some gothic costume shop this coat. And then they fixed it a little bit. Yeah.
See, it is like Star Wars, because it's like Empire, where Luke at the beginning is a little bit frazzled, and at the end he's dressed entirely in black, and he's been through the trials and tribulations of a man who comes out a hero at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, there is similarities in that, you know, Lucas and his people were actively trying to create a mythic type, you know, a kind of story that has plenty of antecedents, and that's what I'm trying to do, except in a totally different milieu.
I expect you expect this to keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah?
At this point, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you've just heard from Hal Hartley. Now you get to hear from people talking about Hal Hartley. They include Saffron Burrows, Alina Lowenson, and Nikolai Kinski. They're next on this very special episode of Higher Definition, all about what else but FAY GRIM. One thing you quickly discover when you hang around people who work with Hal Hartley is that they love to talk about what's it like to work with Hal Hartley. So here to answer that question are 3 stars from FAY GRIM. Saffron Burrows, a newcomer to the Hal Hartley world. Alina Lowenson, a veteran of several of Hal Hartley's films, as well as someone you may know from Schindler's List and the episode of Seinfeld in which she played Katya the gymnast. And Nikolai Kinski, another newcomer to the world of FAY GRIM and Hal Hartley.
I think I didn't know on the first day what the feeling of it was, because you have to get into the same spirit as everyone else, otherwise you're in another film. Right. And I think definitely for the first 4 hours, I was floundering, thinking, I don't know what film I'm in, but the take went so fast, and you go back to your room and think, not sure about that. But Hal is deeply unneurotic, so you do get a sense from him that if he's not happy, he'll tell you, and then you'll change it. And I think there's a lot of information in this film, and some of it is baffling, and some of it, I suppose, is baffling in a good way, in the way that there's always a point in a spy film where you don't understand what's happening, right, and think, I'm just going to go with this. You know, whether it's from the 40s or 50s or 1980s, there's often a point where you think, they all seem to know exactly what they're talking about, so I'm just going to hang on in there. And there's definitely some of that in this. And once I started to enjoy that, then I've been having fun with it.
I'd never read a script like this one. It deals with all those things, but at the same time, it's incredibly funny and it's incredibly witty, and it's not really definable. You can't put it in a genre. You know, the closest thing would be an espionage film, but it's just a singular vision that he has, and I definitely wanted to be a part of it.
Faye, we are in love with the same man.
We are all workers, either coming from the theater, off of Broadway, either different careers, different film work, but we believe in good work and to support the film and Hal's work. And we don't have such big egos, and I think in this industry, the bigger the productions, the bigger the egos, and people are afraid not to be taken seriously or not to have enough respect because they don't have this, they don't have this. This is, I would say, also still an independent sort of film. Not so independent, but I don't know how I would measure it. It's about the work. It's not about the trailer or about, you know, the in-jokes to put someone feel an outsider. There's no point to it. And none of us are interested in that. And it's not even such a family. Okay, we just happen to work together, but it's not like, oh, let's see if this one can make it. She did it because she's already accepted by Hal. So we're all in the same boat.
I think the problem with a filmmaker who's deemed to be intelligent, you know, there's a few we could reel off, especially from the East Coast of America, who, when they're deemed sort of intelligent and teach at Harvard some of the time and have a lot of theory written about them, you often discount the emotion that's there, which is very profound and very affecting in a way that a lot of films that supposedly tug at the heartstrings aren't, you know, because I don't feel his films, particularly Henry Ford, doesn't manipulate the audience. It shows you these characters like a deck of cards and says, here's a few people, here's a community, and we're telling you this small, very specific story. And it becomes quite epic. And I was raised in not at all in Queens, but in northeast London in a community. And you start to map, of course, your own experience onto that. And I hadn't realized how moving it was. I knew it was smart, but I didn't know how much about just the human spirit it is, and about getting up in the morning and making your life work when it's not going very well.
So there you have it. Dang near anyone who is in FAY GRIM, and certainly the man who made it, Hal Hartley. Now, FAY GRIM debuts on HDNet Movies May 18th. That's the day it's also in theaters and on DVD. You want it any way you want it? We got it every way you need it. How's that for an HDNet Films promo?
Hi, Mr.
Now, Parker Posey will also be seen in another HDNet Films release in June called Broken English, the directorial debut from Zoe Cassavetes. Until that moment, you may feel free to send me anything you want at higherdefinition@hd.net. Till next time, I'm Robert Wolanski. Thanks for watching this very special episode about HDNet Films' production of Hal Hartley's FAY GRIM. Till next time, I'm Robert Wolanski.